for me, it was always the question if there's a way to pay open source developers to write open source software. And I thought, maybe with a company around it, this could be an option.
Hey everybody, and welcome to my interview with Frank from Nextcloud, which is extremely relevant right now with countries going after end-to-end encryption and doing things like age verification, because Nextcloud lets you self-host your own data on your own hardware, and it's all entirely open source. So this is a highly relevant interview, and we talk about things like digital sovereignty and other important topics that are going to help educate you and understand why services like Nextcloud exists, not just for individuals like yourselves, but also organizations and governments. Let's get into the interview. It's really nice to have you on, Frank. Thanks for making the time to be here. Do you want to just quickly introduce yourself for people who haven't heard of you before?
Of course, really happy to be here. Yeah, my name is Frank Karlitschek. I'm doing open source for a long time, like over 25 years. You probably invited me because I'm the founder and CEO of Nextcloud. Of course, I did other things before, but Nextcloud is probably the thing that people most know me about.
Yeah, do you have any history you want to touch on before Nextcloud that you want to share?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, I'm old. I have a lot of history. So yeah, so I'm doing open source for 25 years. Before that, I also was a software developer. I mean, I write software since I'm 12, I think. And then, of course, later, lots of open source things where I got involved in the KDE community for a long time, where I was developer and did artwork and event management, and later was a board member, lots of different things. And then, yeah, I founded a company around like social networking. It was running a website called OpenDesk, or sorry, OpenDesktop.org. It was about like bringing Linux community people together by sharing wallpapers and sounds and applications and all kinds of things. And yeah, this was my first company. And then later I founded something that some people might still know. It was called OwnCloud, which was the first project, but Nextcloud is then the successor.
Yeah, so it sounds like you started with development, but now you're in a leadership role. Has that been a challenge? How's that been
No,
for
well,
you?
definitely. Definitely. It is still a challenge because I'm still a developer and nerd by heart. So I really like, I don't know, sitting on a computer and writing code. I don't have the opportunity that much anymore, but whenever I do it, I still think, oh, that's so much fun. That's great. And that's really good. But that's my normal day job with leading Nextcloud. Of course, I have to do things like giving talks, going to conferences, lots of networking, doing sales, doing marketing. And these are things where I'm still, I mean, I do it, it's fine. But if I really would have the choice, I would be writing software. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of people in your position, I think, express similar things. You become successful at something, but then you get more responsibilities than you
Yeah.
than you originally had.
Yeah.
Um, so you mentioned that you started. Did you say you started OwnCloud or
Hmm.
was?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what can you give a little bit of the origin there of starting OwnCloud? I think not a lot of people have the full history here.
Yeah.
How did that lead to Nextcloud, and what's the whole history behind that?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think it's also it's an interesting story, and also for some nowadays also maybe a bit surprising because I mean what fascinated me. I have to go even a step further back to KDE. One thing that fascinated me about open source is, of course, that it's all community developed, lots of volunteers from all over the world, but also that it gives people freedom, right? If you have a free operating system like Linux with a free desktop on it, then you're really in control of everything. You know where your data is, you know how the applications work, you can do whatever you want, you can even change the software, of course, because it's open source. I always find this like super cool and really important for privacy and security. But then when I was still deeply involved in KDE, I noticed that and lots of people use like cloud services. This was like in, I don't know, 2007, 2008, 2009. For example, people start to use Gmail instead of like their desktop client or their desktop, or they start to use like Dropbox for sharing files and more services like that. And I thought, so we are fighting here for a Linux desktop, and we're trying to bring everything like under the control of the users. But then people just use it as a terminal, and the really important things that happen somewhere else in the cloud. And I thought, okay, we really need to have a free software project that, yeah, provides this cloud services like syncing files, but it's fully open source and it gives people control of your data. And then at KDE, we were organizing an event in the US, actually in San Diego. This was 2010, and I was asked to give a keynote there. And then I said, yeah, sure, okay, sure, I do the keynote, no problem. But then a few weeks before the event, I thought, okay, great, what should I talk about? It should be something interesting. And then I thought, this idea about this open source cloud service, maybe this is an interesting idea. So I sat down and I wrote the version 1.0 myself, and then also presented it then as a new idea as a keynote in January 2010. And this is how everything started.
So that was the history of OwnCloud,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
So how did that lead to Nextcloud,
yeah.
and why?
So so as I said, it was just a hobby. It was just a thing, this own cloud project that I started. But after my keynote, really a lot of people got interested in what this is, and I got like contributions, pull requests from people, and then people like sign up for the mailing list, and then the press wrote about it, and people blogged about it, and so on. And then it grew and grew as a really successful open source project. And then 1.5 years later, I thought, okay, well, this is getting so interesting. Maybe I can found a company around it. And for me, it was always the question if there's a way to pay open source developers to write open source software. And I thought, maybe with a company around it, this could be an option. And then that's what I did. Unfortunately, I did a lot of mistakes with founding this company. Just picked the wrong people. Was convinced that I need venture capital for that, which was a mistake. And yeah, lots of things were just mistakes, unfortunately. So the company grew. Basically, was riding the momentum that OwnCloud had at the time. But a few years later, it was running out of money, and no one was happy because of lots of management mistakes were made. I was at the time not in control of everything. It was controlled by other people, including the investors, and it was just like did not work out. And I thought, well, actually, the software is still a good idea. The community is still good. Actually, we have even happy customers. Just the overall setup is not how it should be. And then after the company was close to bankrupt, 12 core people, including me, decided to reboot everything, basically. So we left it and we found the Nextcloud. And in Nextcloud, we decided to do a lot of things better. So for example, Nextcloud is a fully independent company now. Don't have any investors. We are actually 100% open source. OwnCloud at the time, or still is, I think, is like open core. So lots of features are not open source. And lots of other mistakes were made. So I think we learned from it. And I'm really happy to say that now, like 8.5 years later, Nextcloud is doing really, really good. So the new strategy, the new team, the new setup really, really worked. And Nextcloud is now many, many times more successful than what OwnCloud ever was.
Wow. No, that's really cool, and it's I guess a good reminder that even if you put something together and you make mistakes along the way, I'm sure stories like yours are a good reminder that you can always take what you learn and build something new from that. And is OwnCloud still around? Is it still used?
Yeah, it is. It's still around, was around for a bit. I mean, it's a bit of a zombie state now, I think, because a lot of people left. It was now lately bought by a proprietary software company, and it's technically still around, but I don't think it's no more interesting people, no more interesting development is happening there, I can say.
Got it. And so you said everything in Nextcloud is open source
Mhm.
entirely?
Yeah.
So how do you balance that with I guess also being, do you mind explaining actually your structure before I ask that question? Because are you guys a company, a foundation? What's the structure of Nextcloud and where are you
Yeah.
based out of?
It is a classic company. But because we don't have any external investors, I can make sure that it's set up in a sustainable way. So, for example, we don't have to do any great quarterly numbers or optimize for the stock market or other weird things. We don't really have that. We don't have to like pay investors, and we don't have to optimized for the huge exit. All the things we don't need to do. We can just build a sustainable organization, a sustainable company. But of course, it is still for profit. So we have customers, we earn money. The money goes back into hiring more developers to make the software even better. That's a good thing, but it is a for-profit company which has customers, has income, and develops the product and so on. So it's not a foundation.
Yeah, so a lot of people in the community see it as a clash for something to have open source philosophy and still be profitable. So
Mm.
how do you generally see or respond to that kind of criticism?
I don't know. I think you need to have the right people there with the right mindset, right? Because I mean, if you're a company, you can you can run it in a good way and a bad way. I'm not saying they're doing this alone, by the way. It's we are founded the company with 12 people together. And now, of course, we are a lot bigger. We are over 130, I think 140 people now. But
Wow.
everybody, really everybody has the open source mindset. Everybody cares about sustainability. Everybody calls about inclusiveness and diversity. Everybody cares about being an international organization, protecting privacy and security. So I think if you have the right people with the right mindset, then you can do it in a sustainable, good way.
Do you think that it's a myth then that a company can't make money and still have open source ideals?
I mean, I know several companies who do that, including us, but there are also many others. Um, we have partner companies like Collabora Online, for example, that do the Office Suite, or friends from XWiki from France, or Open Project here from Germany, and there are many, many others. And they're all like profitable, sustainable companies who do 100% open source. And I think with the right strategy, it's definitely working.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the way I see it too is it makes you guys competitive because you're competing against some very big players
Yeah,
that are extremely profitable. In fact, profits are probably the number one thing they're prioritizing, and so
exactly.
you need developers, you need engineers. Something I've seen is that a lot of the open source community is scared of money in some way,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I think in some ways it holds it back.
I,
But
I,
also
I agree.
because we need money in the open source community.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we need money for, well, paying developers, first of all, but also, for example, to do like professional marketing, because it is not true that it's enough to write good software. You really need to also promote it and you need to talk about it. You really need to, do marketing, and you need to go to events to advertise it, and you need to do communications, PR work, and all the things. I mean, if you think that just writing software alone in your basement, and then that's enough to compete with the big tech companies, I don't think that's true. You need to be,
Mm.
you need to have a full functional organization just with open source behind it.
Got it. And so before I really dive into Nextcloud itself, especially in the context of probably a lot of my listeners, can you quickly break down the difference between Nextcloud for Enterprise and the Nextcloud that probably most people will end up using that are listening to this podcast? How is one paid and one not?
Very good, a very good question. So um, there are lots of different open source business models out there. And some of them work better, some not so much. I think we picked the one which is the most successful one. That's the one that also Red Hat or SUSE or Canonical or MariaDB or many other projects are using, which is that everything we do is open source. And we don't have proprietary features. There's no open core. So to answer your question, there is not really a difference. So there's not really a difference. In the same way, if you look at Red Hat Enterprise Linux, what's the difference to Fedora, for example? It's like the software is basically the same. There's a little bit of difference about the versioning of the software. I mean, Fedora is a little bit more modern, and Red Hat is a bit more conservative. You can call it stable. And this is it's also the same for our enterprise builds that our customers get. It's a bit more like more conservative release. It's a bit more, it has long-term support. It has all those things, but the features are the same. Features are 100% the same. So there are no features you're paying for. You're paying for the support. You get direct access to our developers, like the long-term builds, certifications, knowledge base, like containerization, some things around it that are helpful to run it in a mission-critical way. But the software is the same and the features are the same.
Got it. Do you think that there's a demographic of people listening, like individuals who would benefit from having the enterprise? Or what's kind of the target demographic for the
Yeah,
enterprise customer?
yeah, exactly. So um, our customers that we want to have and that we have are like big organizations. They're like governments and big enterprises or huge universities, something like that. And everything we do, like with the support and certifications, everything around it is optimized for this kind of users. So if you're a home user, there's nothing that the enterprise version would give you that you want to have. You actually might be a bit disappointed that actually some cool features are missing because they come later. But you don't really have a benefit. You have really like the long-term support and yeah, basically enterprise requirements, and also lots of paperwork, by the way. For example, we have accessibility certifications and security certifications for the enterprise version, stuff like that. But of course, if you're a home user, you still have the same security, obviously, right? Because the software is the same. You don't have the paperwork and that you don't need. So
No, that makes a lot of sense. Now, for those individuals at home who just want to use Nextcloud on their own,
mhm.
what would you say is kind of the, because Nextcloud does so many things. You can have it do email, you can have it do calendars. So what is kind of your like competitor? Is it Google and Microsoft? What are kind of the alternative services that you're trying to get people away from?
Yeah, it's interesting because like 10 years ago, we lived in a world where we have a lot of like these individual products. You have like Zoom for video calling, or Slack for chatting, or Dropbox for files sharing and syncing and so on. And but at Nextcloud, we very early believed in an integrated solution where it's not enough to have like 20 different tools, but you really have a solution where everything is like integrated together. And that you see also for Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace in that way, that you have like one suite where everything is like together. And that's what we are trying to build also in Nextcloud. And if you think that this integration is a strong requirement, then we don't really have a lot of alternatives. So then Nextcloud is pretty unique because there are lots of open source tools. I mean, we use Jitsi here, for example, at the moment. This is, of course, great for video conferencing, and there are others like Metrics, for example, for chatting and other solutions, but they're disconnected, you know. And we believe in an integrated solution, and they're very, very unique.
Got it. Just a few more notes on usability, because Nextcloud, it doesn't have the reputation in the community as being the easiest thing to use.
Yeah,
So I wanted to kind of get your personal thoughts on some of
yeah,
those questions that people had. So
right.
first, what would you describe as like some of the challenges that Nextcloud users face when self-hosting, and what has that changed and evolved over time? Like, do you
Mm,
have different problems now than what you used to have?
yeah. So also maybe going back into history a bit more, yeah, because it was the goal at the very beginning to be self-hostable, that everybody should just like be able to have their own instance. And actually, the very first version 1.0 that I developed, there was not even a user management because I thought every user has their own instance, basically. So basically, if you're 10 people, then you have 10 instances, basically. It was a bit the extreme case of decentralization, basically. And then working together with other people via a federation. So this was the idea, and this is also why I picked PHP as a main programming language, because I thought, okay, it would be great to just have an application which is just a zip file. You unpack it on some web space, and this can be some your homepage at your university or some very cheap web host around the corner. Right? I mean, you can get a web page very easily everywhere, and most of them support PHP. And then OwnCloud at the time was developed that you just take the zip file, you unpack it, and then you have your instance. like super easy. And it still works like that. It's still very important also for me that it still works. You don't need shell access. You don't need the database. You need nothing. You just unpack it and it's working. A challenge is that we are growing so much in features and things getting a bit more complicated. For example, we have, as I mentioned earlier, Collabra Online integrated now as Office Suite. And this comes in its own Docker container. So to run that, you need to be able to run a Docker container somehow, which, I think it's not really possible without shell access or root access even. And then there are other things, like, for example, for our video conferencing solution, we have an additional component written in Go, and another one in Rust, which is that we call a high performance backend. This is a component that's handling WebSocket connections to the outside, and even is aggregating video streams and sending them out in a central way. So this is another component. And then, of course, nowadays we do a lot of AI features. So we have a lot of artificial intelligent features, and they're mostly written in Python, of course. So the setting up like a full-fledged Nextcloud, unfortunately, got more complicated. That's something I always wanted to avoid, but it is just with more featured, it gets more complicated. So nowadays, the recommended way of running a Nextcloud is to use our all-in-one Docker container image. So we developed this Docker container image that has basically everything pre-configured, nicely set up, everything included. And the only thing you need to do is to run this thing, and then the rest happens like really automatically. So this is the recommended way. So in a way, we had to compromise a little bit. If you just have a web space somewhere from your school, it's hard to get every single feature that we have nowadays. The basic is still possible, but the full-fledged experience, the recommended way is this Docker container image.
Nice. And then do you think that Docker container image is kind of your final idea to remedy that, or do you have other ideas down the road to maybe even improve it further?
I mean, the thing is that Nextcloud is really flexible. You can really do a lot of different things. So I would say for a typical home user or a small user, I don't know, for up to 50 users, maybe 100 users, maybe 150 users, I don't know. I would say this is the recommended way. If you really have a big instance, if you have thousands, 10,000, 100,000 of users, obviously you want to have like a clustered setup. Maybe you want to have it on Kubernetes running, and that's also possible, but then, I mean, that's a little bit more manual configuration work.
Got it. So you mentioned hosting it on your own. I've seen on your website like third parties that can host it for you.
Mhm.
Do you mind because that actually seems like the most accessible way for a typical
Yeah,
user to at least try Nextcloud.
yeah,
There's just people who've already set it up for them. You kind of create it almost like you create a Google account and they do the hosting.
yeah.
Why and what's the difference between that and someone who self-hosts Nextcloud themselves? Like, what are the different pros and cons that they're getting from these different workflows?
Yeah, I mean, if these hosters, and there are lots and lots of them, if they're doing a good job, then the software and the experience is exactly the same. The difference is, of course, that in one case, if you go to one of those hosters, they want to be paid, so you need to pay them a little bit. It's most of the time not expensive, but you need to pay them for the hosting services. And in return, of course, you have the turnkey experience, as you said. You just go to the website, type in your, I don't know, login password, and you'd have an instance. You have nothing you need to do. You don't really need any technical experience. You don't even know what the server is, or don't need to know what Docker is or whatever. It's just you sign up, same as with Microsoft and Google and everybody else. So it's the easiest way. I would say the drawback is, of course, most of them want some money. You need to pay a few euros or dollars a month. And the second thing is you need to trust them, of course, to a certain extent, because they have your data then. I still believe that because there are hundreds of those hosters all over the world, I still think this is better than everything at like 5 big tech companies. So having a little bit more distributed and federated and in different countries, in different, I don't know, continents. I think this is better than a centralized system like Microsoft or Google. But of course, at the end of the day, you need to trust them, right? I mean, they have your data. And we can talk about end-to-end encryption in a second, but there's still a certain level of trust that you need to bring to them.
Yeah, so I guess it's a perfect segue then. At the time of recording, Hub 10 came out exactly a week ago,
Yeah.
or almost a week ago. Um, and one of the big things, because I know one of the big things I've heard is that people have been wanting like a proper full-fledged end-to-end encryption
Mm.
uh, in Nextcloud for a long time.
Yeah.
So what kind of end-to-end encryption did Hub 10 release, and how does that solve some of these? How does it transfer some trust away
Yeah.
from these hosted providers?
Yeah. It's a good question. So end-to-end encryption is, of course, a good thing. The problem is, or the challenge for us is also to balance this with convenience. So because of that, we have different options. You can switch them on and off. You can do different compromises that you decide yourself what you want to do, and you have different options. There are some cases where it's pretty straightforward and obvious. For example, for the video calling, we just introduced full end-to-end encryption. So, and if you use the latest server and the latest mobile clients, for example, then and all other web interface same, obviously, then video calls are fully end-to-end encrypted. So there's no way for the hoster or the server admin to get your video. You cannot really record it or look inside it. So that's a very straightforward, and yeah, this is easy. But then there are other things where it gets a bit more complicated. For example, with the end-to-end encrypted video syncing, file syncing and sharing. For a while, we introduced this option that you can have end-to-end encrypted folders, and we built the cryptography into our clients. So then, if you use our desktop sync client or our mobile clients, you can look inside these encrypted end-to-end encrypted folders and get your files. But there are some limitations. For example, for a long time, the web interface did not work. So in the web interface, in the browser, you cannot really look inside these end-to-end encrypted folders. The reason is that the attack scenario was and is that the server admin should not be trusted, basically. So the server admin could be a hosting provider that you don't want to trust, or you assume that the server is hacked, or I don't know. You basically don't want to trust the person who runs the server. But if the admin is not trusted, then the admin could modify the JavaScript code that's sent to your browser to access your encrypted files, right? And with this code, you can also then access maybe the encryption keys that are maybe they're stored locally, but obviously they still need to be accessible from JavaScript, and this comes from a maybe malicious source. So this is why we enabled this feature in the past only for our mobile clients and desktop clients. And this is really the 100% security. I don't think there's any way to hack that. It's really, perfect security there. But people really came to us and said, but I really want to use the web interface. I really want to. I don't want to compromise the convenience here with security. And with this release, we implemented actually support at the moment, read-only support for the web interface as an option. So people can choose if they want to enable this feature or not. You can say, for me, convenience is important. You enable this option, and then you can also go inside encrypted folders from in your browser. But of course, you need to trust the admin then a little bit, because again, they could like build some backdoor into the JavaScript code. But there's still benefits to do it. For example, if someone just steals the server, for example, or if the law enforcement comes and like takes the server infrastructure away, then there's no way to get into the files because the keys are on the clients and not on the server. So there are some benefits and some drawbacks, and unfortunately, we give the people the choice to do what's best for them.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that people who have higher threat models, they can always do local encryption with things like Cryptomator
Oh yeah, sure.
before it touches
Of
Nextcloud
course, of
at all.
course, of course. But the thing is, of course, our end-to-end encryption is built in a way that it also has like advanced features like sharing. So you can have a shared folder, an end-to-end encrypted shared folder with other people, and this becomes a little bit more tricky or not possible if you use third-party encryption tools.
Got it. And this might be a incorrect assumption, so please correct me where my line of thinking is wrong here. I believe that what you're describing with the JavaScript encryption is a common criticism I hear of things like Proton Mail,
Mhm.
because theoretically, you're still trusting the server to serve you the encryption key. Now, some providers, like I believe Mega, the cloud provider that has end-to-end encryption, has released a extension for web browsers that loads it as an extension in your web browser. So, have you considered some kind of
Yes,
solution like that?
yes, this is an interesting idea, and we are considering that. And actually, we have this already for mail. So we have a webmail interface, of course. You can read your mails in the Nextcloud in the browser, and we support S-MIME encryption and GPG encryption there. And this is actually implemented in a way with a browser extension. And we work together with a project called Mailvelop that developed that, and we integrate it into Nextcloud, and this works exactly as you described. So the actual key management and the actual crypto is not in the JavaScript code that comes from the maybe hacked server, but actually comes from a browser extension, which comes from a different source. And there we implement exactly like that. So this could be a solution for the future.
Got it. Really cool. And I assume just to make sure my understanding is correct, the reason why you only have end-to-end encryption in the mobile and desktop clients is because the encryption is done in the code that you download for the mobile and desktop clients rather than relying on the server
Yes,
to.
exactly.
Okay.
So the mobile clients and the desktop clients, you have them from a different source. Right? I mean, it comes from the Google Play Store or the App Store from Apple, and a hacker would need to, hack the server and get the encrypted data from there, and at the same time somehow submit a malicious mobile app to the Apple App Store, which then gives him the key, and that's really hard here.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. It'd be really cool to see that extension to carry over that same protection to the
Yeah,
web. And it sounds like you guys aren't too far off from possibly doing that.
yeah.
So that's really exciting. So on the topic of Hub 10, what were kind of the highlight features that you're excited for personally?
There are lots of things that are cool. For example, and this comes completely from the community, we support right to left languages now in the full web interface. So if you're from a country where the writing is right to left, then this is now fully supported, and I'm really especially excited about that because it's a ton of work, right? It's all the user interface, and it's 100% done by a community contributor, which I think is very impressive. Um, this is a feature. Then I think something that I'm personally excited about is an AI feature in the area of artificial intelligence. And I know this is very controversial. Some people don't really like it at all. Some people think that there's potential. I want to say that everything we do in the AI area is optional, and actually all of it is off by default. But we have a lot of interesting features with locally running open source AI models, for example, for um, finding emails that you still need to answer when a reply is needed from you, or suggesting email replies, or summarizing chat messages, or transcribing video calls, and so on and so on. So I have a lot of cool features. In this release, we developed something that I find specifically, especially interesting and cool. And this is agent support. So in the past, you could just ask questions, and the AI assistant from us can also look inside your data. For example, you can say, "Hey, when is the next meeting with this person?" And the assistant can go through to my calendar and find it. Or you can say, "Hey, what is the status with these customers?" And they can look through my emails, my project management to-dos, or my files, and give you a nice answer. So this we had this already for 2 years now. That's cool. But now with Hub 10, with the agent support, the AI assistant can also do things for you. For example, you can say, hey, can you please move this meeting to a different time when I have time for the meeting? And it can go into the calendar and see, there's this time slot. Okay, this is double booked, and then move the meeting around, sending out an email notification to the other person and move the meeting. Or you can say, hey, can you please summarize the latest support tickets from the support chat room, create a PDF and share it with Henry, for example. Right. And then it just does all the different things and then, yeah, does it for you. And I think this is something that other companies like Apple, or I think Apple announced it, but they still don't have it. Google has it already, but of course, not in a privacy way and friendly way. And I'm really happy that we are one of the first who have this feature and done completely open source, running completely on your machine. No bit is going somewhere else. And I personally find this very exciting. Also, how it works internally, I find this quite mind blowing. This feature.
Yeah, no, it sounds crazy, and as you describe it, you're selling me on wanting to try it out because I haven't tried it out yet. I'm definitely a person who's more cautious to start using AI features.
Yeah.
I do have a local AI tool on my computer called Jan AI, JAN.ai.
Mm.
It's open source, offline. I really enjoy it for little things, but if it worked in the way that you're describing, I probably use it a lot more often. What kind of pushback do you hear about AI? Because personally, my issues with AI revolve around how data is trained in the first place, where are they getting this data from?
Mm.
And of course, what you described is the privacy. It's it's a next level up from like typical privacy concerns when you add AI to them.
Yeah.
And from what I hear, if you self-host your own AI and it's offline and it's private by default and it's yours, it kind of addresses most of the issues. So are there still any criticisms you've heard about AI that you think have some legitimacy to
Oh,
them?
definitely. There are several. The first is, of course, well, we don't talk about the privacy part. It's already you mentioned that. Basically, 99% of all AI assistants out there running somewhere in the cloud. You don't even know what's going on. I mean, you don't even know what's happening with your data. For example, if you, I don't know, you use ChatGPT as a company to look into documents, and it's possible that you use it to train their model, and next time your competitor is using ChatGPT, they get answers that are based on your documents, and so this is possible. So this area is like completely unclear and a complete privacy disaster, of course. We solve it, as I said, with the locally running models. But then the next question is, for example, the next concern is around energy consumption. What is the CO2 footprint of the whole thing? And it's if you ask like Google or Microsoft or OpenAI, you don't really get an answer from them. That you just hear from that, we need a few more nuclear power plants. So I don't know. It seems to be huge energy consumption. With the local running models, of course, you have it a bit more under control. You can measure it, and we support features where you can actually measure what's going on, and if you can run it on the GPU or can run it on the CPU. So we give you some tools to keep the energy consumption under control. But of course, it is a concern. It just needs more energy than a normal Nextcloud server without it. Then there's the question around um, like bias in the model, right? Is the information that you're getting there is really the correct information, or is someone who built the model has some, I don't know, political opinions built in there which you're not aware of? And you have this, for example, with the latest model from China, the DeepSeek one, which is just doesn't have certain information, certain historic events that are not popular in China. So there's some bias built in, and we also hear the same from other models, like from the Grok model, for example. And this is a concern, and I think this is actually a big concern. And we need to, if we more and more rely on AI, we need to, see what's going on and what is actually trustworthy information and what is not. And then, of course, is the whole problem around not being accurate, not being precise, not being correct. I mean, we all made the tests where we asked ChatGPT or other assistants some questions and get then weird and wrong answers, right? We all know that. But if it's just an answer that you get which is not correct, this is one thing. But as I described earlier, if you're using agent support, and then the system is doing things for you, then and the model is somehow broken, not correct, and doing weird things, then this can be an issue. For example, with our agent feature, we always ask the user before doing anything. Right? So before it sends an email in your name or a chat message in your name, or I don't know, accesses some web service on the internet in your name, you always get like a dialog box, right? You ask like, do you really want to do that? And I think this
Mm.
is something that is really important because, yeah, these AI models, they're still not really 100% correct all the time.
Yeah, so of all the concerns you listed, if someone was to set up and use AI on Nextcloud, how well does it address each of those concerns, and where do you still hope to make improvements?
I think from the privacy side, it's like completely safe because it just is local, right? There's no data is sent to Google or Amazon or whatever, right? So this is the privacy side is completely safe. Same as with everything in Nextcloud, right? I mean, Nextcloud is built in a way that runs like completely on your infrastructure. It doesn't rely on any external infrastructure. So this is, I would say, solved. The energy consumption, as I said earlier, I mean, if you activate this feature, your Nextcloud server will consume more energy than without the feature. That's just a fact. And you need to decide if this is worth it for you or not. Of
What do
course,
you typically see in terms of like increase in energy consumption on average?
I mean, it depends what you do. If you just, I don't know, use Nextcloud in a normal way, and then a few times a day you just translate a document into a different language, or you create like a chat conversation out of a meeting protocol or something, you just click the button a few times, then it's not so bad. This is very minimal. Also, features like our face detection and object recognition, they are really highly optimized. That this is minimum. This is a minimal what you have there. But of course, if you activate other features, for example, the feature that is always gives you a summary of all your email conversations, then this means that every email you get, and there are some people who get lots of emails, if they're all piped into the assistant like all the time, then it can be significant. Then it can be that you have double or three times the energy consumption.
Mm.
But it depends how you use it. Then with the bias or the how truthworthy the models are. I mean, as I said, when with the agent support, we always ask for confirmation, so we really should check what's going on. Also, if you let the assistant answer an email for you, you of course obviously need to read it first. And then if you do other things like summarization of calls, you always get the hint that you really should double check that. If you're not really sure, you should double check if it's really correct. This depends a little bit on the users, if they really do it. I mean, if they just blindly believe everything the system says, then yeah, you might have a problem. They might have from time to time just wrong information. But yeah, that's with everything on the internet, I think.
Yeah, and then what models do you use, and what are they trained on?
Hmm.
How can we ensure that you don't have your bias that you injected into Nextcloud models?
Good question. So we played with different models at the beginning, and nowadays this is completely abstracted away. So you can basically use all the models on the internet, all the LLMs with Nextcloud. You can choose it yourself. You can even as an admin, you can swap them out, use the models you like. I mean, a lot of people still use the Llama models as being quite good. The DeepSeek models are also very good now. They also consume less energy than the Llama ones. That's good. But honestly, if you look on a Hugging Face, that's like the main point to share these models. You get something new every day. And nowadays, they're so standardized that basically all of them also work with Nextcloud. Yeah.
Okay, so important distinction there. You guys don't develop your own LLM, so you allow people to use third-party LLMs within Nextcloud.
Yeah, so we developed some models for some easier tasks like categorization and like looking into login behavior and detect suspicious logins and priority inbox and stuff like that. We actually have our own models. that are also open source, but we don't develop our own large language model. Would be just this cost like millions of maybe billions of dollars. So that we rely on models that are available on the internet.
Got it. And then what do you kind of recommend? Like, what have you seen as the most popular LLM if someone's new to Nextcloud and they want to try out the AI features?
Yeah, I think the Llama models are quite the most popular one. Yeah.
Nice. A question that came up as we were talking about AI is I feel like something I saw with other organizations that released AI features, um, there seemed to be a common take, and not one that I don't subscribe to sometimes either, depending on the organization, that a lot of the AI features seemed designed for enterprise or corporate environments and not for typical end users or consumers who maybe don't want as much of those features. So I guess just a broader question, when you choose to develop features for Nextcloud, do you typically have more of the enterprise user in focus? How do you choose which features to develop, like in every version of Hub that comes out?
That's a really good question because if you read like business books, business 101, that teach you how to build a company or build a product and so on, then the first thing you always learn is that you need to pick your target group that you need to develop it for, right? Do you need to develop, as you said, for home users? Is it maybe for students? Is it like maybe for government or hospitals or whatever? You need to pick your target group. And I'm always think about that and think about what should we focus on. But so far, I have to say that I didn't had to pick a target group. So far, we are able to build features that are usable for mostly everyone. I mean, there are some things, for example, our photos application to manage your photos and categorize them by on a map and on a timeline. I guess it's more a home user feature. There are not a lot of companies who use that, but I know some companies who actually use it, but it's more for home users. And then you have other features like I don't know, automatically classify documents based on their security level. We can, for example, check if a document contains like social security numbers or credit card numbers and automatically detect them as confidential. And then we block sharing with them outside your IP space and so on. I guess these are more features that are not really for home users, but then for governments or enterprises. But these are really the exceptions, I have to say. These are really the 1%. I mean, I don't know, 98%, 95% of Nextcloud, we are able to develop for everybody. We don't really have to choose that too much. And then if you think about it, there's also software like Microsoft Windows or Microsoft Word, which is also software for everybody. Right? There's no Word for home users and a Word for enterprises, the same.
How would you describe the Nextcloud community? Because you said that you had the community from OwnCloud, and it sounds like you were able to still migrate that over to Nextcloud. So
Yeah.
when you say there's a community behind Nextcloud, is that because they're developing it, or you just have a big community that cares about what you do?
Yeah, so both, I think. I mean, obviously, there are millions of users on the internet all over the world who just use it, and that's great. That's also a community. But what I really mean with community is the people who help to push Nextcloud forward actively. And this can be developers. So, for example, people on GitHub, just like, I don't know, doing a pull request and developing a feature or fixing a bug or even reporting a bug or coming up with a feature request, something like that, really actively getting involved in the development, or people who are developing Nextcloud apps, like extensions for it. And there are also a few hundreds of them. People who help with translating it. Nextcloud is available in over 100 languages, and they're all done by volunteers. And even people who are, I don't know, promoting Nextcloud. I mean, there was one event where I still remember it was an event in the US where I was invited to give a keynote there, and I traveled there and I walked into the exhibition space, and then there was a Nextcloud booth, like run by volunteers, and I
Wow.
did not even know that, and that's really great. So we have really a few thousands of these volunteers who really help in the core of Nextcloud to push it forward, and this is so nice. And it's also essential because, as I said, our company is still small and we really need to have this bigger community and really have it as a movement and not just a product that's done by some startup.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a really great thing that I'm sure a lot of projects wish they had. So the fact that you've been able to develop that's really, really cool. And when I was in Berlin for, was it the 2022 um, launch that you guys did
Yeah.
with was it 2022 or 2023?
I don't. We do-
No, it was 2023. It was
It could be.
the 2023 launch for that
Yeah.
year, and there was like just so many people there who had nothing directly to do with Nextcloud. They were either developing their own third-party tool for it, or they were just there because they cared about it and they just were they were near the area and they figured, oh, I might as well go see the update myself. So it was a really interesting, eye-opening experience to see like such a big community around the project. So you can feel it even from someone who wasn't like in the community, still attending the event.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, no, good stuff. I have just a few final questions here. They're more like chill, fun questions just for people to get to know you a little bit better. And the first one is actually less about you, but I thought it was still a fun question. Is there like a big mistake that people make when they self-host Nextcloud that you just want to clear up right now and go, don't do that? You should never self-host Nextcloud like this or make this mistake.
Maybe I have only a boring answer. I would say think about backup. So there are a lot of people, a lot of users who just take a Raspberry Pi or something, pop in an SD card and run Nextcloud on it, and it's easy. But hardware also fails sometimes, right? And then always have a backup, I would say. Think about a backup.
It's simple, but not many people do it. But once something goes wrong, I think people learn quickly and they don't do it a second time normally.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask what your favorite open source project was outside your own.
I mean, there are some big ones. I mean, there's Firefox, right? I mean, that's a super important project. Without Firefox, we all would use only, yeah, Chromium basically. So this would be really bad for the internet. So I'm a big, huge Firefox fan. Um, there's some other tools. I mean, I still love the Linux desktop. I still like KDE, but also GNOME. Also because it is, I think, a very visual and also has something to do with the user experience, something I really like. That's also something I like at Nextcloud, that you can really innovate in a way people use the software. I mean, I also like command line tools or libraries in the backend, right? They can also be great. But I really personally also like open source applications that interact with the users in an interesting way, and then still have a soft spot for the Linux desktop there.
Yeah, so if you install a fresh new copy of Linux, what distro do you choose and what DE do you choose?
For a long time, I was really passionate about different distributions. I mean, I was running Gentoo like forever, which like recompiling everything every night and playing with this and that, and was really and optimizing my kernel and everything. So I don't know. Nowadays, I'm actually happy if things just work out of the box. And I maybe it's a bit boring, but I like Ubuntu because for that reason, because it just works. And also, if something doesn't work, you can Google the answer, which is just one of the biggest distributions. So maybe
Yeah.
it's a bit boring answer, but it's just rock stable and I don't know, no problems. And yeah, desktop environments, I'm switching back and forth between GNOME and KDE. I mean, there's still KDE. I mean, there's still have so many friends still there, and KDE is also like very powerful and great. But I also have to say that I like the simplicity of GNOME nowadays. Again, because I don't know, I'm too old to configure everything myself all the time and playing with all the options. So I also like something that just works out of the box, and I think there's GNOME is a little bit better there.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Good takes. What's next for Nextcloud? Where do you see things in the next few years?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the mission is still the same, that we're trying to be the open source self-hosted alternative to Google and Microsoft. And I'm still somehow waiting for the day where they do something we cannot do as open source community. I had this fear in the AI space where I thought, okay, well, now we're really out of the game because what they're doing is we cannot replicate, but we somehow still can. So trying to be competitive with them, having the even better usability features, while of course having better security and privacy. I think this is still the mission. I think, of course, things will happen on the feature side and I don't know, improve things everywhere. But I think the direction is this will stay the same.
Got it. And then the last couple questions, kind of the same question. So what tech are you first excited about?
You mean when I was young, that I first got excited about? Or?
No, now. Like,
No.
what tech are you looking at right now that
Ah,
you're kind of excited for?
uh,
Doesn't have to be about
yeah,
Nextcloud, but
yeah.
just in general.
Maybe it's a bit boring, but I'm still I'm not excited is the wrong term, but I'm monitoring what's going on in the VR AR space because I think there might be in a few years like glasses that you put on that look normal and they can still like show you information about your surroundings, like if you look at a person, you see floating above the head the name of the person, or you project it on the floor, you see the way where you have to walk to your next meeting and stuff like that. I mean, I know this was really hyped a few years ago, and now it got a little bit quieter. But I don't know. I find it interesting if we in the future no longer need like smartphones in our hands, but really something that is completely blended into our view. That's something I find interesting. I find also everything happening around AI interesting. I mean, we're definitely in a bubble, and in a few months, I think the bubble will burst, and then there will be the huge disappointment that AI will not solve everything we think it solves. But I think it still will stick around, and it still makes a difference in some areas like productivity software, like Nextcloud. And yeah, I'm excited about all the options there to help us like communicate better and collaborate better. I find this fascinating, and every few days I come across an interesting new use case where AI can really make a difference. I find this fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's stuff that can be exciting. The second part of the question is, what are you scared about? And I think the answers for what you're excited for, what I'm scared
Maybe
for.
the same.
But
Exactly. Maybe the same. Maybe AI that can have a negative impact, and also like if we like have a screen in front of our face all the time, 24 hours a day, also is scary, I have to say. So also with VR, AR, it is cool. It can also go terribly wrong. So yeah, same.
cool. Well, thank you so much for your time, Frank. I'm sure a lot of people got value from this and got to know you and Nextcloud a little bit better. So
Thanks a lot.
keep building cool stuff.
Great.
And there you have it, everybody. I really want to thank Frank for coming on and sharing so much insight and so much knowledge. And I had the luxury of actually getting to be around the Nextcloud team over in Munich. And I also met some other wonderful people there as well. I'll be doing a bit more coverage on that shortly, but I just want to say thank you all for listening and learning a little bit more about your privacy, your security, your digital sovereignty, and open source as a whole. If you enjoy these interviews, I couldn't do it without some of the amazing supporters out there who are our Techlorians, who are in our communities, and all of you who watch this and especially engage with it, leave comments, give a like, share it with people you know. Everything I just listed massively helps in keeping these interviews free to access for all of you and allowing you all to know some of the behind the scenes on services that you know and love. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time on Techlore.